Hi, everybody. So today's lesson is going to be for Tuesday, April 21st. You do not have a bell ringer today. We're going to do 2 slides, 1 writing, 1 picture, and then you have a TED Ed to watch. And I posted the link in the live agenda and also on the discussion thread. Guys, today is like my favorite topic. Now, I say that for a lot of stuff. I know that. I enjoy history a lot. But when I say like this is my favorite thing, I look forward to this all year. All year. We're going to talk about Joe McCarthy and McCarthyism today. I don't know if I brought him up at all in class, but Joe McCarthy is my favorite person because he is so terrible. We all know I love the Cold War, but Joe McCarthy is one of my favorite people in history because he's awful. He stinks. He is the worst. He's a terrible human being, but I love the guy. I love the guy. In college, we had to write 30 pages on any topic you wanted. And people were writing like about the history of baseball and the history of this. And I was like, I'm writing mine on the Cold War and Joe McCarthy. And it was amazing. It's amazing. Knocked out those 30 pages super easily. So I'm very excited for today. The TED Ed video, I took notes on it and it's great. It is great. Scary at the end. Pretty scary at the end, but it's a good one. So let's recap what we talked about. The last thing that we've talked about. The last one was about spies, and we talked about the different acts that were passed by Congress to prevent spies from, prevent people from having communist organizations and establishing those groups in the United States. And if you do, they have to be approved by the United States government first. So we talked about 3 spies in particular. Well, I guess 4, because we have Julius and Ethel Rosenberg. They were executed. A lot of the times these spies, when they were put on trial, a lot of the times we didn't have all of the information against them. And like years later, like into the 90s, when the Cold War was over with, we have actually got more evidence, and it was confirmed that these people were spies. So it is pretty lucky that we were right on this, and we didn't just like put people to death or to life in prison or whatever the sentencing was with being wrong. So Julius and Ethel Rosenberg, they were executed in 1953, and they were actually spies. So there's that, and I have a picture here of the 2 Rosenbergs. Giving information to the Soviet Union, like our nuclear weapons information from like our army and our military, and also just like information on the United States government to the Soviet Union. So that's pretty scary. And it was a real fear, and kind of what we're going to talk about today, like the fear of communism and domestic communism, like home communism, is a very real thing at this time. And spies is a very real fear to have. But our reaction to it made it so much worse. That's McCarthyism, and we're going to talk about that today. So how our country responds to something like this, it matters a lot. And if we respond in a negative way, or we're too forceful with it, then it makes things way worse. Like, for example, with the coronavirus and the pandemic, immediately everyone went to the store to get like toilet paper and stuff. Well, the stores are still open. We didn't need to mass run there and get all of our supplies. It was a fear and it was a panic. But how we respond can actually make the situation worse. So let's move on then. We have slide 16 today. Like I said, we're doing 16 and 17. It is just titled Joe McCarthy. You have 2 vocab words. One of them is Joe McCarthy, and the other one is McCarthyism. It is named after him. So I'll have my notes over here, and I'll be reading kind of back and forth. So Joe McCarthy, who was this man? Joe McCarthy was a senator from Wisconsin. He was a Republican senator from the state of Wisconsin, he was very intense in his accusations towards people being communists. And in one of the cases, this is kind of where it all started here, he was in West Virginia delivering a speech before a Republican women's group with the topic of being the dangers of communism, which again is a real fear because we have communist parties establishing themselves in the 1930s and the 1940s. You know, we're allies with the Soviet Union during World War II. Maybe they have some good ideas here. And so those ideas are spreading into the United States, and the communist parties are establishing. So he's giving a speech to a group of women, a Republican women's group, about the fears of communism. And he gets to the point where he starts making extreme accusations against the federal government. And it says, in his speech, McCarthy claimed that there were 205 known communists working for the United States State Department. He even went as far as waving the lists around. McCarthy is known for getting up and anywhere, because this has become his normal thing that he does. When people see McCarthy, they're like, oh God, where's his list? He waves around a list and says, look, I got 205 names of confirmed communists working in the United States federal government. 205 people right here. So then he travels to the next state, or maybe he goes back home to Wisconsin, and he gives another speech, and he goes, guys, I got a list of 250 people right here that are confirmed communists. Senator McCarthy, wasn't it 205? No, it's 250. And it changes all the time. The number of communists. It's 300 this day. My neighbor Billy is a communist, whatever. And he just accuses people. Doesn't have any evidence. Doesn't have any reason as to why he would accuse somebody. This is McCarthyism. Tactic of spreading fear and making baseless charges. You have no evidence, and you're looking at somebody and saying, you're a communist. That is McCarthyism. He is spreading fear. When he's getting up and they're on that stage and he's waving this around and saying, these are communists right here, that's scaring people. And they're like, okay, all right, these people work in the United States government. Let's get them out of here. We need to fix this. This man is right. I mean, he works in government. He must be telling the truth. No. So McCarthyism is spreading fear and making baseless charges. And the man never had an actual list of people. Never had an actual list. Think about this. If the federal government actually had confirmed lists of people, of communists in the United States, would they give it to a senator from Wisconsin? No, they would not. So we never actually got to see the list. He made it up. Remember, there were communists in the country, but Joe McCarthy didn't know who they were. He was just lying and spreading fear and making things worse. And so the damage was already done. He even had the Senate committee. A Senate committee looked into his charges and found no evidence of communists in the State Department. He had earned his reputation as the nation's top communist fighter. He's tough on communism. He'll get it done. He's a great guy to have in government and to protect us and blah, blah, blah. But now the United States is going to take this and like I said, the reaction to it is going to be terrible because our leaders are going to trample on our freedoms in order to protect us, right? We have, remember the court case, Korematsu versus the United States, basically saying that the United States can do what we want in times of fear and in times of war. If the United States is scared or if we are in the middle of a war, like this is because of the Japanese internment camps, we can do what we want. And so nobody stopped him. We're scared. We're fighting the Cold War with the Soviet Union. We might have nuclear war soon. Nobody stops him. And they just go. He takes it and he runs with it. And what's also important is that this isn't just going to stay in the federal government. This is going to spread to other branches of government. Like it's not just a legislative branch. You got executive and judicial. Universities, they're going to start firing teachers who start to have these radical beliefs. Labor unions, like private businesses, like if you have different kinds of art hanging on your wall, or if you sign a petition for something, or have different diverse friends with different ideas, you could be accused of being a communist and you can be fired. Like these accusations of no evidence at all, and you're just accusing people of being a communist. This is going to destroy people's lives. It's going to destroy their careers. It's just like the Hollywood 10, right? Hollywood's going to take a hit with their writers and their actors and their producers and their directors, because if they're accused of being a communist, then they don't have a job anymore. Right? Like this is going to destroy people's lives. On top of that, the FBI gets involved, and J. Edgar Hoover was the director of the FBI, and he took it so far. He said, okay, thank you, McCarthy, for starting this for me, and he's going to have the Federal Bureau of Investigations, the FBI, conduct investigations and spy on people and tap people's phones so they can hear conversations, so they can catch all the communists before they try to overthrow the government. J. Edgar Hoover was a very intense man, and he made the fear of communism so much worse, just like McCarthy. There are kind of historians who think that, based on J. Edgar Hoover's life, that he was gay, and he never came out because that wasn't allowed. That wasn't like a thing in the 1950s. And so he was, unhappy with himself and his life. And so he kind of took it out on a lot of people and putting them on trial in the federal government, basically ruining their lives. Because if you were put on trial and maybe you were found not guilty, try to go out and find a job when people know that you were still on trial for something. And maybe you lied and you really are a communist and they just found you not guilty, but you still lied, right? So this has to go with the government directly targeting citizens, which is scary. This is our federal government targeting people to protect us. Like we have HUAC, the House Un-Americans Activities Committee. This is like one of the biggest government agencies conducting investigations into people and their lives, right? To keep us safe. I'll show you a picture of Joe McCarthy here. This is him. He actually, and if you watch the TED Ed, it explains it too. Joe McCarthy, there he is pointing. He's probably leading an investigation. Like, people don't look happy with him. There he is. There he is waving his list around of 205 communists, confirmed communists. The quote says, "I have here in my hand a list of 205 people that were known to the Secretary of State as being members of the Communist Party and who nevertheless are still working and shaping the policy of the State Department." Right? So he's just inducing panic and inducing fear into the public. We have Richard Nixon, who would later be president, but he just worked in the government before that. He's going to be a big person that's going to target communists and do investigations. And Bobby Kennedy, actually JFK's brother, was one of the lawyers who would target, who would work for the committee for Joe McCarthy to target potential communists and do investigations. Bobby Kennedy actually came out and apologized for that. He had realized later on that he should have never done that, and I think he just got sucked into the fear of potential communism or communists overthrowing the government. So Bobby Kennedy actually apologized for that later on. People, why didn't anyone stop him? People were scared to speak up because then everyone's looking at you and saying, why are you telling Joe McCarthy to stop? Are you a communist? Do you not want him to attack you? They didn't want it to ruin their careers, and they were also just scared, So, you don't want the eyes to be pointed at you because you don't want your life to be ruined. You don't want your job to be at stake, or your family, right? So this is a big thing, and it's scary and it's awful. And, McCarthy's downfall is that he's going to start to target the military. This last sentence down here. McCarthy soon went after fellow Republicans and the United States Army, and people believe that was going too far. The fear of communism was still there, but his career would not be. It's kind of like the bonus army when Herbert Hoover, they were protesting, the citizens were protesting for their pension. They wanted money, and Herbert Hoover called them communists, right? So this was the end of Herbert Hoover's career during the Great Depression. And his presidency, but Joe McCarthy is going to blame the military, and he's going to say, oh my gosh, the United States Army has communists, there's confirmed communists in the Army, and it's these people are supposed to keep us safe. I think you're going a little bit too far. Joe McCarthy, his career is going to go downhill because there's only so much fear that you can induce into the public. How many times can you say, I have a list, there's communists here, there's communists in this state, in this state, in this state, and people are all right, there can't be that many, So people start to realize that he's lying, and he has no evidence, because after all this time, he has produced zero evidence. He's got nothing, right? You just conduct these investigations and hope that you're right when you convict them as being guilty. So Joe McCarthy's career is going to basically go down the drain, and he is going to drink himself to death. He actually dies from alcoholism. So the man was not stable. He didn't have a stable career, and he did not have a stable life outside of government. So there's Joe McCarthy. Love the guy. He's a terrible human. Don't forget to write your 2 vocab words and a summary for that slide. Watch the TED Ed. It's a great one. Bye, guys.